So episode 4 of Twin Star was actually pretty dang simple, to be honest with you. This episode for the most part was simple, at least to the ending, or to the middle I should say, because that right there is where things kind of like picked up. But overall, this right here was a good, solid, and of course an enjoyable episode, in its entirety. And so the episode itself, it starts off where we had Benio looking like in this pond, and we see her now thinking of her brother. And so from the way she was talking, that right there led me to believe that her brother might be dead. But at the same time, when we saw her brother, and all we saw was like a shadow or the sun or the sunlight like covering his face, that right there kind of believes me, or at least make me want to think that there is a chance that he's alive somewhere. And so right now I do wonder where they are going with that, because obviously like brothers or brotherly love, I just say, that right there was the main component for this episode. And so we see now that Ryogo, he actually came out there to talk to Benio because she was still up, and we see now how it was late. So he was like kind of wondering about that. And so now we see that while they were talking, he had mentioned how he wants her to bring back Rukuro to like the world of Exorcists, and we also get to learn just how deep, and we learn now just how deep his like relationship with Rukuro is, because now he was like both of them. They actually came there with like no family, and that right there is what they're like able to bond off of, because he was saying how he views like Rukuro as like his little brother, and we see now that Rukuro was like there listening to them talking, but obviously he did not make himself known. And so we see now that on the following day, which was like Sunday, we do learn how Jisama, he was like gone, and so we did not see him in the entire episode. But we see now that how Ryogo and the other two, they had two tasks to do. They had to like go report to like their higher up, and then they also got called for a job. And so we see now that they like asked Benio and Rukuro if they wanted to come. Benio had to like stay behind because she had to do maintenance on her swords, and we see Rukuro being very bratish, and eventually he actually just stormed off. And so for the most part, Rukuro in the episode did kind of like annoy me, because he was like acting very bratish for the most part. But we see that, that right there, that even though it did bother Ryogo, there was not much he can do. And so we see now that when Rukuro left, he was like walking around where we had Benio staying behind. But we see that that Ryogo and the other two, like at first when they had went to go take the report to someone, we just saw like this normal guy like wearing some kind of apron. And we see now that the boy with the ponytail, who actually worked with Ryogo, like once Ryogo was like done talking to the man, we have that boy asking Ryogo just how much does he know about that man, because he was saying how he didn't like look that strong wearing the apron and all. But we do learn how this guy was the ace of like his branch, and that right there was like for his day job, because he is a child. He is a what do you call it? Crap. He's like a daycare. I mean a daycare. There we go. A daycare worker. So he like worked with children, and that was why he like wearing the apron. And so now this guy was like shocked, because he didn't expect him, to be that strong, especially to like be their ace. So I do wonder if maybe this guy will fight at some point, because that right there, like will be random to like bring in this new character into the story, and we see like nothing happen with him. But going back to Rukuro, like while he was walking, he eventually had went to this shop where we have this older woman who had worked there. And so we see now that this older woman had actually knew him, but Rukuro like kind of forgot about her. But eventually she was like asking him these questions about his older brother, who we all know is Ryogo, and so we see now how she could tell like they were fighting because they actually fought in the past as well. And so apparently, that even though this happened, a few years ago, where Rukuro was like, younger, she still had recalled it just like this happened yesterday. And so she actually gave him some food. And to me, this scene here, like, to me, it felt kind of random and, like, mainly thrown in. But at the same time, at the end, it made a lot more sense. But at that time, though, to me, it felt somewhat out of place. Now, that right there could be just me. I don't know if anyone else felt that kind of way. But what really made it seem so weird to me is that how Rukuro hardly like paid any attention to what the woman was like saying, because after he had like ate, he pretty much like dined in ditch because he just like walked away, and we see now how the woman was like talking to him, but at the same time he was like giving her no second thought. But now going back to Ryogo and the other two, we see now that their job, they actually had to exercise this house that looks very old and very run down. And so we learn now how originally the older parents lived there, but of course they died, and then we see how this couple, like these 5 college students, and I believe the other group was like married and had kids, but in total now we have 11 people who actually moved in there, and out of nowhere they just like vanished. And so of course now they want to find the source of that. And we see now that while they were like going around purifying the house, they could not sense anything evil except for the final room. And we see now that when the Kagure had like made itself known, that right there kind of like scared them, because they were saying how the air, it felt a lot heavier. And now, and now both of them were like saying how they did not want to spend a second, in that room any longer, because it felt like they were like being watched. And that right there is where the Kagure, like made itself known. And then we see Ryogo like actually opening this gate to the like the other world, the other realm. And we see now that when the Kagure, actually appeared, we see that it was like so strong that when it hit like these 2 fodder characters, because these 2 are actually like pretty freaking weak and like kind of lame actually, they actually got sent back to like the real world, leaving Ryogo, leaving Ryogo alone there. And so now both of them, they were like very beat up. But then we have Rukuro, who actually made it back home first, and then both of them had like came to him, or at least they had like made it back. And I do wonder just how far away what is from home, because if they actually managed to walk back there while they were like so beat up, that right there is like kind of crazy. But regardless, regardless, they had told Rukuro what was like going on. And obviously, there was no way he could like go there alone. And so eventually now we have him going to Benio, and we see him like actually swallow his pride. And we see him now getting down on his knees and like begging her, to help him. And that right there, was like definitely surprising, because I never thought, we would like see him swallowing his pride. But at the same time, that right there is what he must do for his brother, because he told Benio how he would like scared to fight, but he is like even more afraid to like lose his family. And so when Benio had realized that, she was like telling him, to like raise his head, because someone asking an exorcist to fight must never, should not be allowed to like bow their head, something like that. But regardless, she was like going to help him, and eventually both of them were like now on their way to help Ryogo. And so now, going back to him, we see him pretty much getting trashed by this Kagure. And we see now that this Kagure, it was like some kind of like 2-headed beast, but at the same time, but at the same time, from his faces, you could tell that's like an older couple. So to me, that right there is kind of like, I'm guessing that the owner parents, when they died, they became Kagure, but for some reason, like they were like haunting their own home. Like to me, that right there is like kind of my theory, but at the same time, it's definitely weird because why in the world would they do that? Like why would these old folks, become Kagure rather than like passing on? Like to me, it makes no sense. But whatever. Like we see how like there was no way Rukuro or Ryogo can actually take on this thing, and we see him now like trying to hide, and we see the Kagure now actually move on, and so we see that when he was like so beat up. And we see him now thinking, what would Rukuro say in like this kind of in this kind of situation to him? We see now that when he looked up, the Kagure was like staring right at him, and that right there was like giving me Attack on Titan vibes. But at the same time, I did find it like kind of hilarious, and that right there might be messed up. But we see how the Kagure picked him up and tossed him around, like a few times. But eventually, we have the Kagure trying to like pin him down, and we see it like stab him in the leg, and that right there looked painful. And so we see now that at one point, like at one point where it tossed them like pretty far, we have all these smaller Kagure like coming out of the woodworks. And so now, he was saying how, they were coming to actually finish him off. But to me, it seemed like they had came there for a show, because it seemed how like they were all watching this go down like it was entertainment. And so eventually now but eventually now we have Ryogo trying to make a final stand, but at the same time his sword actually went back to normal, and we see now that when he was going through his talismans, he actually had ran out of them himself, for one, because earlier in the episode he had mentioned how they were like running low on them. And we see now that we saw like some kind of like special talisman, but at the same time it looked very different because it was darker compared to the rest. But that right there was because it was like kind of old. And so we see now that even though this right here, this seemed like the end for him, he was not going to give up, because we see him now stabbing the older head like in the eye, and that right there kind of like pissed it off, because we now have it like grabbing him, and obviously it was like going to eat him. But luckily we have Rukuro finally arriving, and I will say that him and Benio, they took a lot longer getting there than I thought they would, because I never thought he would like get in that bad of a shape before these two would arrive. But regardless, we have Rukuro punching the old man head, and that right there actually made it blow up. But that right there wasn't all, because he actually sent the entire body of it like flying away. And so now where it was like just him and Ryogo, talking for a bit, we see now how the talisman that was hinted at a few times, that right there was a servant like talisman, and then we get the flashback of a time where Ryogo had took Rukuro to that shop with the older woman, and we see now that when Rukuro was like younger, he actually gave Ryogo a servant talisman, because he was saying how one day when he's the strongest, and if Rukuro can like be helpful to him or useful, he will like make him a servant. And so all this time he actually held on to that. And then we see now how Kagure was like trying to ruin this like touching moment, and that right there made Rukuro mad, and we see him now punching it, and that right there obviously killed it. But then we have all these other Kagure who were like now surrounding him, and Benio with that speed once again coming in there, and she actually like took them all out. And so then we see how the main Kagure it actually got back up, and now of course they like had to deal with that. And so we see now how Benio, she actually was like going to take on the bigger one while leaving Rukuro, to the smaller ones, but that right there didn't happen, and they actually had like charged in when Benio had like kind of saved them. And so now we see that, that Benio, obviously she was able to like deal with the smaller ones because, once again she has that speed and even her power is definitely like no joke sometimes. And then obviously we all know how Rukuro has that arm, and that arm was like able to pretty much like kill its entire body like in one blow. And so once they were like done with the Kagure, we have Rukuro helping Ryogo, get out, and we see now that when the other two came back, they seem to be in a lot better shape, and that right there, definitely seems, kind of weird, but whatever. They did help Rukuro by like taking him to the hospital, and then we have Rukuro who was like waiting outside for Benio because we learned now how she like stayed behind because she was like purifying that room, and so at least now at the house, it's definitely it's definitely purified now, but at the same time it's like it's so beat down and so rusted, you might as well just tear it down and just start over again. And so we see that we see now this very cute and adorable interaction between Benio and Rukuro because he was like thanking her, but at the same time, she was like he has no reason to. But then we see how that went like downhill somewhat because she was like, she was like how he's like kind of useless most of the time, but when he fights, that right there, it's like when he's great. And Ryogo also says, and Ryogo also says something very similar to that because he was saying how when Rukuro fights, that right there is like is when he's like at its coolest. But then we see that this little nice bonding between them, it actually did. Oh my god. It actually didn't last that long because once again, they have went back to arguing just like how they always do. And so pretty much for the preview for next week, we actually get what I thought would happen this week, where we have that Guardian who I thought would like appear in this episode. He will actually appear next week, and I do want Rosie planning because maybe he might challenge Rukuro, and I believe that right there wouldn't be fair if that happened because this guy's a Guardian. So to me, I do believe he definitely outclassed Rukuro, even though he does have that very special arm. But like I said, overall, this right here was a very solid and enjoyable episode, and so for that, I'll probably give it a rating. Well, if I did rate it for that, I would probably give it a 7. But as always, let me know what you guys thought. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, you guys take it easy. And I will see you all next time.